Hello, and welcome to the Emergency Traffic Podcast, where we explore the tragic line of duty deaths of firefighters and paramedics to learn from these ultimate sacrifices. We will try to produce one of these podcasts every couple of weeks. These podcasts are a brief synopsis of events that we've obtained from official reports and published stories about these tragedies. We want to provide an easy and convenient method for today's firefighters to quickly learn lessons of past line of duty deaths and possibly prevent them from happening again. My name is Paul, and I'm a retired Deputy Fire Chief in Western Canada after 36 years, both in the full and part-time first responders. You can follow us on Twitter at podcasttraffic.twitter.com or email us with your comments and thoughts at emergencytrafficpodcast@gmail.com. I have a guest with me tonight, my friend Dirk, who's a full-time firefighter in a metropolitan department, and he's going to, hello Dirk.
Hello, Paul.
Yeah, so he's going to chime in here as we go through this podcast tonight. It's wintertime here in Canada, so we can stay warm inside and produce a podcast. This podcast this week will be about the double line of duty death about 2 years ago in Porterville, California, on February 18th of 2020, where a full-time captain and a full-time firefighter lost their lives searching for occupants in a public library fire. The city of Porterville, California is a city of more than 60,000 people, nestled between Los Angeles and San Francisco, a typical North American city, highways, schools, college, hospital, nursing homes, and churches. The Porterville Fire Department is a combination department with 42 career and 15 volunteer firefighters operating out of 3 stations, providing a typical fire rescue, hazardous materials, basic life support services to the community and the surrounding area. Daily staffing at the time of the incident were 10 frontline personnel and a battalion chief. Their first alarm assignment was 2 engines, 1 ladder truck, 1 patrol, I'm assuming that's like a brush truck or something, battalion chief, and a mutual aid engineer. A mutual aid engine from Tulare County, which was only staffed with 1 firefighter. This first alarm basically brings 12 personnel. Second alarms will recall any off-duty personnel and an additional Tulare County engine. What's the typical first alarm in a metropolitan department like yours, Dirk?
For single-family residents, it would be 2 pumps, a ladder, rescue, and depending on the area of the city, we'll get a tanker, which may or may not have only a minor crew, so an officer and a driver.
Right. Yeah. That's sort of pretty typical for the major cities, but the manning is always different. We're going to talk about that here next.
You got 4 guys on every rig, so you get your 16 plus on the first alarm.
Right. Yeah. So a little bit more personnel than these guys was looking at 12 for a first alarm. Still better than some. I mean, last department I was on, you had 3 people on the first alarm, and then maybe another 4 or 5, couple trucks. So you might get 12 after the second or third truck. After this incident in 2020, the fire chief requested a serious accident review team to ensure a complete and impartial investigation of this incident. This report was recently issued publicly, and most of the information we share here comes from the SAR. There's not a NIOSH report out for this incident yet. It should be forthcoming pretty quickly, I'm assuming. So we made this podcast based on this SART report. The report and the podcast are not intended to be unduly critical of the fire department or to place any blame. Unfortunately, some of the issues that are discussed here are far too common and continue to impact the North American Fire Service tragically. It's Emergency Traffic's podcast intent to increase awareness, resist complacency, and inspire positive change. For the years that a lot of firefighters didn't study after action reports, line of duty death reports, because they're long and often hard to read. Everybody with their busy lives, we know how hard it is just to get our group together to do a podcast. People just don't have time. So that's where we kind of thought, hey, let's do a podcast. Maybe guys can, firefighters can listen to it when they're working out or walking the dog or doing something. And hopefully there's some little pieces that resonate with them that they can remember, so that the next time they go to a call, they go like, oh yeah, right, I should think about that. That's kind of what I'm hoping for with this podcast. How about you, Dirk?
Yeah, no, I like the idea. I really appreciate you doing this, because yeah, firefighters are unfortunately very complacent when it comes to stuff like that, and it would be nice if every once in a while you would do a case study just to look at these, and then honor the sacrifice those guys made, right? I mean, if you don't follow up on it, they died in vain. So
Right. Yeah,
yeah, I
exactly.
think yeah,
I couldn't
it's
say it
important.
better. I know I tried to do it like when I was with part-time departments. I tried to do it, for a practice. Hey, let's review just the executive summary, but quickly the eyes would glaze over, and you didn't know how much traction you were getting. So we'll see where this goes. We've only done 4 or 5 so far. So all right, well, back to the call then, so we can get into the discussion of the recommendations. So the building, the Porterville Public Library, was originally built in 1953 with 2 floors that encompassed approximately 4,500 square feet. Oh, I should have that in meters. I don't know what that is in meters.
Oh, who cares?
Okay. With concrete slab floors and cinder block walls and lightweight steel truss and composite roofing. And it was right in downtown Porterville, just around the corner from the fire station number 71. In 1957, there was a small 1,600 square foot wood truss composite roof that was added. And in 74, there was a major addition of 12,000 square feet. So they expanded the library almost 3 times its original size on 2 floors with cinder block walls, lightweight steel composition roof. This will be important later, but there was a pre-plan done for the building, which is great. Do you have pre-plans for a lot of buildings where you work, Dirk?
Well, we do have a lot of buildings, so I'd say probably not a lot of pre-plan, but I think every district does a pre-plan. Well, before COVID, once a month. It's kind of like the goal, and
Right.
just to get a general idea on the hazards, right? So I think building construction, we're lacking the knowledge of that, and then put that in consideration with a building on fire. It's pretty like the knowledge there could be better.
Yeah, there was just some talk on social media today about recent fires and firefighters going into vacant, abandoned, condemned buildings, and the elements have been attacking them for a long time and stuff. But yeah, and there was also some on my social media feed about industrial plants. Like, you shouldn't go in if you don't have a pre-plan for it. And the apartments I've been in over my lifetime, I've been on 4 different apartments, and it was really always a hassle to get a pre-plan for. There's just no time with training and everything else we had to do. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, the pre-plan for this building suggested an initial attack fire flow of 460 gallons per minute, or 1,700 liters per minute. So basically, 2 or 3 good nozzles, 265s or more, and a total fire flow of 3,000 GPM, 11,000 liters a minute for initial. So if it was fully well involved.
That's a bold statement for for a department that's staffed like that, because if you need 3,000 for initial attack, when we're talking about interior attack, like how many 2.5-inch lines do you bring in, right?
Yeah, well, I think for the total fire flow is probably, if it's fully involved, I'm guessing, versus initial attack, which is 460, still like 1,700 liters a minute. So that's some, you got to have some pretty good lines, and to work that quickly is going to be tough.
Yeah, that's an inch and 3/4 and the 2.5 for sure.
Right.
65
yeah.
and 44. Yeah, at a bare minimum.
Yeah. So, it was a typical public library, lots of books, computers, study areas, community programming spaces, etc. So a lot of combustibles in there. The incident occurred at 4:16 or 16:16 hours on February 18th, 2020. The temperature was 67 Fahrenheit or 20 C, with a very light wind from the northwest. Police and Fire Dispatch Center received the call for a structure fire at the library, located just around the corner from Station 71. A minute later, the police arrive on scene. The officer entered the library and confirmed an all clear on the first floor. I have a little resources list here because it gets confusing as we're going through the podcast, but I'll read off the resources list. So Engine 71, which was in the station right around the corner, was the first on scene. And then Battalion Chief 70, who was an administration battalion chief, was second on, or, was on scene fairly quickly as well because he was in the main station next door. Truck 73, which is the aerial, was second to arrive on scene. Engine 72 was third on scene. They actually didn't get assigned upon arrival, which we'll get into as we go through it. There was Battalion Chief 77, who's the shift commander working the shift that day. And then there was Fire Chief 70. And then there was also another captain who was the training division captain, and he ended up responding and taking over rapid intervention crew eventually. So just a little summary there. Mm-hmm. So Engine 71 with a crew of 3. The captain, firefighter, and engineer arrives and advises dispatch that they have heavy smoke on the alpha side, so the front of the building, and they're pulling out an 1 3/4 or 44 mil pre-connect to the front door. Battalion Chief 70, that was the administrative battalion chief, arrives and requests a working fire protocol from dispatch, which means police and roadblocks and EMS and utilities, etc. While the first arriving police officer notified Battalion Chief 70 that no one else was in there, Battalion Chief 70 directed Captain 71 to initiate fire attack from the alpha side. A bystander contacted another police officer and informs them that there's a handicapped woman on the second floor. This officer then informs Captain of Engine 71 while he's preparing a fire attack for him and his partner to go in with the line about this potential victim on the second floor. Captain 71 with Firefighter 71 then make entry for a search on the alpha side without the hose line. This information and action was not communicated to Battalion Chief 70 or anyone else who was responding to the scene. Battalion Chief 70 established library command and instructs Truck 73 to establish a water supply upon arrival and to stage on the Delta side. The third police officer confirms to Engineer 71 that she searched the second floor and a handicapped woman was out of the building. So this is the engineer on pump 71 or engine 71 who's outside, presumably getting ready to supply water to that line. Soon after, at 16:21 hours, Battalion Chief 77, the shift commander, arrives, so third on scene, and confirms heavy smoke in the building, requests on all traffic to change to Channel 2. This is a Porterville Fire Department protocol. On any incident with more than 2 units, everybody changes to Channel 2. So it's sort of different than many departments where you're assigned a working channel when you respond. They kind of wait until it's a real one, and then they all move channels.
That's a recipe for disaster right there.
Yeah, it could be a bit of a problem, and of course it does come in. Like I said in the script here, this will be important later. Battalion Chief 77 directed Truck 77 to initiate fire attack through the window on the Delta side. That must be Truck 73. That's Truck 73. I got the wrong number there. Okay. And he went to confirm a plan with Captain 71 because unknown to him who was searching inside. Truck 73 established a 4-inch 100mm water supply and flowed water into the Delta side windows with 2 1 3/4 hand lines. Engine 72 arrives on scene. No assignment was given. Battalion Chief 77 assumed command from Battalion Chief 70. So the shift commander assumed command from the training or the administrative battalion chief. He immediately initiates a second alarm, all off-duty staff, and additional mutual aid engine and battalion chief from Tulare County. Battalion Chief 77 meets face-to-face with the engineer of 71, the first engine on scene, and then calls the captain on Channel 2 to confirm that he's inside the structure. There's no response from Captain 71 who went in the structure, who may not have got the radio channel change. Captain 71 makes contact with Battalion Chief 77 on Channel 1. Battalion Chief 77 asks for a CAN report, conditions, action, needs. The captain replies that they are searching for the handicapped woman and the community area was searched and they were moving back to Division 1, the first floor, to continue the search. Captain 71 asked Battalion Chief 71 to confirm if the woman was outside or not. Battalion Chief 77 replied that he thought so, but he would confirm. Battalion Chief 77 then asked Captain 71 to change to Channel 2. The policy was to go to Channel 2 upon arrival. 2 minutes later, Battalion Chief 77 called Captain 71 on Channel 2. Captain 71 responded, but Battalion Chief 77 did not acknowledge, so he didn't hear the reply. Captain 73 for the truck asked Battalion Chief 77, who was command, about laddering the roof, and Battalion 77 replied that he was considering a switch to defensive. Battalion 77 then declared a defensive strategy to all units on scene. Battalion 77, whose command, I guess I should have wrote command instead, that would have been easier to remember, attempted to contact Captain 71 on fire attack, and Captain 71 did not respond. Then Battalion Chief called Captain 71 on Channel 2, and Captain 71 did respond, but Battalion 77 did not acknowledge him. This happened twice. Captain 73, the truck, asked Command's opinion on vertical ventilation of the structure, and Command advised him to wait until they could get a good roof assessment once the fire was knocked down. Command attempted to contact Captain 71 on Channel 2, no response. Captain 73, the truck, advised Command that they had a good knockdown on the Delta side through the windows and they'd be attempting to gain roof access. Command then directed Captain 70 from training, who was extra, to form a rapid intervention crew and locate Captain 71. At 16:32, so this is approximately 15 minutes after arrival, 10 minutes, the fire chief arrives and does a face-to-face with the commander on the Alpha side. At 16:32, 16 minutes from arrival on scene, Captain 71, who went in for the search, declares a mayday, mayday, mayday on Channel 1. Battalion Chief 77 acknowledges and asks Captain 71 the location of the mayday. Captain 71 responded that they came up the stairwell, we are disoriented, and we are low on air. Battalion Chief 77, the incident commander, advises Captain 71 that he's going to send in 2 to locate them. Captain 71 inside repeats again that they're low on air and they're activating their personal alert safety system alarms, and they can hear the pass alarm sounding in the background. Command requests to hold all traffic on Channel 1. Fire Chief states, halt all traffic on Channel 1. We have a mayday, and we are going to run that mayday call on Channel 1. Switch everything to Channel 2. Fire Chief 70 assumes command from Battalion Chief 77, who runs the mayday. Captain 70 training is assigned to Channel 3 as the incident tactical channel. The Battalion Chief 70 administration assigns himself as Division Delta and has a crew of 3 led by Captain 73 heading up the stairwell to check for Captain 71 and Firefighter 71. So that's the truck guys. Battalion Chief 70 checks with Captain 73 on the truck on his status. The captain advises, truck Captain 73 advises they're on the 2nd floor in the banquet room and they're still searching. Battalion Chief 70, the administrative chief, advises Captain 73 from the truck, do not go past the landing and go back to the landing at the top of the stairs on the Delta side. Fire Chief 70 sets up a staging area next to Engine 71. Captain 70 training, the rapid intervention crew updated that they made it to the 2nd floor stairway and he could hear a pass alarm and was attempting to locate it. No fire, but 0 visibility. Rapid intervention crew at 16:40 hours, so 18 minutes in, located Captain 71 in the bathroom and requests additional manpower. They were able to partially extract the captain before running low on air. They passed the extrication to a 2nd rapid intervention crew. Captain 71 was extricated and transported to where he was pronounced deceased. Several more rapid intervention crews entered the library in an effort to locate Firefighter 71. They were unable due to low visibility and building collapse. Defensive operations were taken due to heavy fire and collapse. After extensive search efforts, Firefighter 71 was located the next day, late in the evening, and extricated by mutual aid urban search and rescue teams. The cause of the fire was found to be incidental. 2 teens have been charged with arson and murder, and it's still in the courts. I checked recently, it's still going through the court system 2 years later. This, I was thinking of it, that when they say they're trying to get the captain out of the bathroom and they couldn't get him out all the way, they run out of air, pass it on to another RIT crew. I know when I was doing blue card training and stuff, Phoenix Fire Department did all kinds of tests on how fast they could get someone out. And they came out, there was an article published in several of the magazines calling RIT is not rapid. And I remember, I don't know if you read that one too, Dirk, but they did prove that it takes a long time to get someone out.
And a lot of manpower. Yeah.
A lot of manpower, yeah, way more than you could expect.
And it kind of makes sense because the first crews, they're still searching. So they're exhausted. They're low on air. Now they find a firefighter and now they have to remove him. If they didn't bring air to that firefighter, unfortunately, it's almost a useless task. So
I know that's exactly the point.
This incident is really depressing.
I know it's tough, and that's why no one wants to read these, and no one wants to. But I think we need to expose it to, like, they didn't take air in with the RIT crew. I mean, the guy said on the radio, "I'm running low on air." The RIT crew should be prepared. Although I know the Blue Card in Phoenix, when they did all those tests, they found out that really the most likely team to rescue a downed firefighter is the teams that are already inside, because they know the area a little bit rather than a crew going in to try to find them. Of course, they didn't have luxury here. There was no one here. They had a very low staffing.
Exactly. If you have multiple crews inside a structure, it would be your own. Like if only one guy goes down, it's usually your own crew, and then would be crews that are adjacent. So rarely gets deployed, and so that's known, unfortunately, because this incident is not from the 1990s. It's 2 years ago.
Exactly. This is not new. I know I was preparing for some of the older ones, and we didn't know a lot of the stuff we know to get today. And there's a good article that came out actually today on social media saying, when are we going to stop burying our heads in the sand and listen to some of this research and modern stuff that's going on, which is why we're doing the podcast. So discussion points. So first of all, Engine 71 arrived. The company officer did not request additional resources. So you just pulled up at your local public library with smoke showing. Did not ask for additional resources. He did not announce which mode he was operating in or give a description of what actions were being taken. So none of the typical, arrival report. We've got a 2-story public library with smoke showing. We're going to initiate a search, or we're going to attack from the alpha side, whatever, right? None of that was happened, which is unfortunate. Why that company officer didn't do that, we will never know. Well, we get into it later in the training and stuff, but it's tough. These departments are stretched. So when the Battalion Chief 77 arrived, you took over command. He did not get to give a description of actions taken again or strategy, offensive or defensive. Battalion Chief 77 did request a second alarm, but as we said in the preamble, this only provides an additional engine. A third alarm request would have brought in a second additional engine, an additional truck, and an additional battalion chief. The recommendations were, have command guidelines predefined as to structure fire operations, what other second alarm is going to do. I know where I was before, I used to say, if you're committing the aerial, you better order another one because we only have one and it's an hour away to get the second one. So same with the boat. If you're putting the boat in the water, where's your next boat coming from? Because you need to think ahead. That's tough. And where, a lot of departments will have it all set up, right? So this is the first alarm, second alarm, how many trucks come, where they go, etc. And they didn't even pull the trigger on that third alarm. Command training, important, to all company and chief officers regarding initial actions. Explore automatic aid and mutual aid agreements with surrounding departments to redefine second and third alarm requests to provide adequate resources. That's a big deal, automatic aid, right?
Yeah, I think that's a problem in a lot of departments because everybody thinks, hey, we can handle it ourselves. We don't need the other ones. Not sure if that was the case there. And that might have been the reason for not calling in a second, or because a second alarm, like one additional rig, it's pathetic, right?
Yeah.
With a big building like that, I mean, what was the square footage there? It was 15,000 and 5,000. I mean, if you see smoke coming out of a big building like that, that means there's a lot of fire going on inside.
Right.
And that should be an
Exactly.
automatic. So yeah, it's
Well,
I think sometimes it's the pride to call a second, right?
maybe, and I think also we're so used to, and this is the trap we all fall into, that, the habits, the tunnel vision is, it's a house, it's a fire, we got this, right? We do it with the same stuff every time. It's a car fire, we got this. It's a pot on the stove, and so we're so routine in our operations, we rarely see a big fire event, and therefore, if we don't simulate, which is why I like programs like Blue Card or your command program at your department or every fire department, they run simulations. You pretend that, hey, okay, what if Canadian Tire, or, well, now, what if a big store starts on fire? There was a big store. Was it a Walmart or something burnt recently somewhere? I can't remember. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, it's such a different fire. And we noticed that a lot in doing these podcasts, is that the large commercial fires, we don't fight them that way. And it actually comes up here in the recommendations.
I think the problem is, I wouldn't even call it complacency. It's just we don't adjust our tactics to the size of the building or the make of the building. I just know from FDNY that they stretch different hose lines for different occupancies, right? Anything more than 2 stories, they pull a 2.5. I mean, they got the manpower, but they realize you need the higher flow because there might be a potential for a higher fuel load. So, and most departments, they got a pre-connect, 4 lengths pre-connect, like 200 feet, with a 150, 160 GPMs target flow.
Right.
And they fight everything with that initially. Like you roll up to a Walmart and you'll see they're gonna stretch that 1.75 inches. Right. That's what Charleston suffered. They lost so many guys because they pulled the booster line, because that's what they've always done. Right. And I think that is the complacency. It's not that we don't know how to fight a fire, but we are really complacent in adjusting to the building.
Yeah, and that's where, command training is the big thing, right? Just, we have to practice for those big fires, because that's why we're there. We're there for the big fires, not for the car fire, pot on the stove, car in the garage, whatever. I mean, those are day-to-day routine calls. It's when something big happens is you want to be able to be capable. Recommendation 2 was this continual size up based on ICS priorities of life safety, incident stabilization, and property conservation did not occur. They were just stuck with, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to search for the lady. They didn't know where people were. Attacking through the window, which is fine. Knock the fire down before you search, although probably with too small a line. The arrival report, what's the situation? So everybody else knows, I always tell officers, if they're doing their arrival report, why are you doing it? It's not for dispatch. Dispatch is doing their thing. It's for all the other trucks that are listening. So they kind of paint a picture of what you see is kind of what I say.
Yeah, I was just going to say, paint a picture. Tell people what you see and what you expect, right?
Yep. And in a town like that, every firefighter in the department knows what the library looks like. All you got to say is, we're at the library and there's smoke coming out the whatever side. Risk assessment based on the incident priorities. Develop and communicate a plan, initial action plan, assign resources. No mode was announced. Confusion over offensive and defensive at the company level. They talk about, training and follow standard practices such as ICS. They talk about slicers, which again can be controversial in some of the traditional departments. Size up, locate the fire, identify and control the flow path, cool a heated space from a safe location, which they tried to do. They were doing through the windows, but probably with too small lines. Extinguish the fire, rescue and salvage when you can do it. Also,
this extra opportunity kind of bit them in the ass there, because there's the first in rig, they heard there's a lady in there,
Right.
I don't know why they didn't take a hose. I mean, I know why they didn't take a hose line, because they only have two guys on the line.
Right, right.
So
Two
they
guys.
thought, hey,
Yeah,
speed over safety, right?
yeah. Any of us could have done that. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you know what? I'm not sure. I think we were getting away from searching without a hose line. Like I would search without a hose line if there's already a hose line in the building, but I would not go without a hose line unless I have something with me and there's still some visibility, or I'm 100% sure that maybe have two thermal imaging cameras within the team. There would have to be a lot of that. I'm not sure. I honestly, I would say I would never go into a structure when there wasn't a hose line in there for a search.
That was my policy as
Yeah.
a chief officer, was like, you're not going in without a hose line. But
Yeah.
hey, departments do it all over North America.
Yeah.
Truck companies and stuff, and with and it worked. It worked for 50 years, but the fire's different today. The fire's much more volatile. Even in the library, the computers, the tables, the chairs, the carpeting, all that stuff is solidified gasoline, right?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah, and then there's some departments that stretch too many lines. If you ask me, like if I assign a crew to search and rescue, I don't want them to bring a hose line in there when there's already a hose line on that floor.
Right.
If I assign them to the second floor and I know there's no hose line, I would highly recommend them bringing a hose line, right?
Yeah,
and if it's just your way out, right?
I got caught one time in an apartment building with, smell of smoke, a little bit of smoke in the building. We're looking for the fire. We're looking everywhere. We're starting to tear walls apart and stuff. And I was on the second or third floor. We're in an apartment, and the bathroom seemed hot. So I told the guys, I said, open that wall up right now. And they all kind of looked at me because, small city fire department, they're not used to actually doing a bunch of damage for a call. And I said, yeah, come on, rip that wall out. And so, all right, let's go. And they're ripping the wall out with Halligan and the New York hooks and whatever. And sure enough, what comes out of the wall but fire. And all of a sudden, I'm looking for a hose line. I was a battalion chief or a captain at the time, and I ran out to the balcony. I says, "Get me a hose line up here," because all of a sudden we opened the chimney to the fire, and so you get, again, it's complacency.
Yeah. Did you make sure that the positive pressure fan was on before you opened the?
Exactly. Yeah. Recommendations from the report were incident commander should utilize the following incident priorities, which will dictate the strategic and operational objectives. First of all, life safety, which is what they did. They went looking for the lady, although they didn't. Maybe their life safety was maybe overlooked, which is sacrifice we all talk about having to make. Stabilizing the incident, property conservation, protecting the environment. Those priorities have to stay in the forefront. Incident action plan should be developed, at least in your head, by the first arriving company officer. Utilizing CAN reports if you can. And here's the one right there. It says, company and chief officers should continually train on high risk, time compressed events where management and assessment of risk is critical to personnel safety and incident stabilization.
Slow down.
I went and did that. The JIBC has a really good emergency management or emergency officer 1 and 2, where you do that with the little model cars and the little model buildings and the hose lines and stuff. And they say, okay, this is what's happening. Decide now. And they use Reseal VS for that a lot. Who are you going to rescue? What are your exposures? How are you going to confine the fire? What's your extinguishment, overhaul, and ventilation? So you had to actually prioritize them in order as you were doing your assignment, if you will.
Yeah.
Safety officer, they didn't have a safety officer. So it talks about that too. And again, it says adopt command guidelines as defined in fire scope, because California's fire scope, ICS 500 structure fire operations, and train company officers on command guidelines. The number 3 was initial incident information was not transmitted to all personnel. Personnel were not aware of the situation and tactics of Engine 71. They ran in there quick to find that lady after he had said, we're going to attack it on the Alpha side. Understand why he ran in there quick, potentially. We weren't in their shoes. but he didn't tell anybody, and that was the big problem. The only person that might have known was the engineer on 71.
I think, like, just reading through this whole switching channels forth and back, and I mean, it sounds easy because you only have two choices, but when you're in a zero visibility environment, you're exhausted.
Right. Can't see.
There's no reason in hell to switch a channel.
Right.
Like, no reason at all. Like,
and they probably just forgot, right?
Yeah, but it's those little things that when you look at the timeline, it costs a minute here, costs a minute there, costs a minute here.
Yeah.
And that's all air for those two firefighters inside the building, right?
You just fiddling with your radio is air.
Yeah.
Yep, you're right.
Yeah. And then again, everybody knows where the radio is, but not a lot of people know, how to switch the channel. Usually it's not a simple solution either, right?
So can you change channels with your glove on in the dark?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
With your pack on and everything. That's the thing.
Do you have to take it? Do you have to take it out of your pocket to do that? And then you have zero visibility with fire gloves on.
And they talk about that. Develop communication policies that address communication plans during high risk, low frequency events such as rescue mayday, where everyone on the fire ground is aware of what each unit is doing. These scenarios should be vetted through an aggressive training program to expose and correct critical communication gaps. Develop policies and procedures regarding incident communications to identify channels for dispatch and incident operations, according to the report. I saw yesterday a local city here near where I live, they had their dispatchers in their command unit at the training grounds while the guys were doing live fire. So that dispatch could be trained and understand what's going on, and the guys got used to talking to real dispatchers when they're doing live fire, which again, Blue Card talks about doing that too. I don't want to harp on Blue Card, but it was social media actually yesterday saying, and it had a picture of their 3 dispatchers sitting inside their command unit, which they pulled out to the fire training grounds and had them running the calls, which is great. That's exactly what this recommendation says. Their dispatchers were police dispatchers, and I think they only had 1 on duty at the time. So right away, overwhelmed, the phones are ringing, the radios are going. Transfer of command, formal transfer of command did not occur between Battalion Chief 70 and Battalion Chief 77. Vital information was lost, situation status, incident objectives, priorities, unit assignments, resources available and en route, communication plans such as the channels. None of that was transmitted between the 2 of them. Again, that doesn't follow what we're trained for communication guidelines. So, it's all the stuff fell out the window for some reason, and how important these little things are in a critical event like this. Number 5, incident communications on multiple occasions where companies were incident operating on 2 different frequencies. Actually, one of the fire departments I was a deputy chief with for 6 years, they used to have 2 different frequencies, two dispatches, and they were running on 2 different frequencies. And at one time I was driving back, I was in my chief's truck, I was driving back from somewhere, I don't know where I was, out of town, and I heard both departments responding to the same call on the same road on 2 different radio channels. So they didn't know they were going.
Yeah.
And that's how fire trucks run into each other as well. So
absolutely.
Right away, I stuck my foot down, and I put my foot down and stamped my feet, and I said, we have to stop this now. 1 channel for dispatch, not 2. Yeah. Policies for which channel to use based on incident size. This is not a routine and can lead to confusion. So exactly like we've talked about. Radio use and discipline. Several members were using the scan feature on radios, probably because of this channel changing thing.
Yeah.
So they left it on scan. But
that's an easy shortcut.
If you're on scan, you can miss stuff. While it's scanning, you miss stuff on your channel. So discussion points, training and practice for comms at complex incidents such as Blue Card or a similar type, hazard zone training program. And that's exactly what Blue Card is. It teaches people how to use the radio under a time crunch. Proficient in radio use is very important. Dispatcher staffing and training, police dispatchers do not have the training and experience for complex fire incident and staffing issues. The dispatch situation in the Kimberly podcast that we did a couple of weeks ago, where the two medics went into the confined space after the two victims, and they also died. And it turned out that the dispatcher missed from the initial call possible confined space because the dispatcher had a bunch of noise in the background apparently going on, and they had worked a double shift, and that was all came out of the inquiry after, is that dispatch training and staffing was an issue. ICES assignments, besides IC, only Division Delta was actually assigned, and Division Delta actually Delta actually self-assigned themselves. They weren't told that you'll be this. It's just like, oh, I'm going to do this, which, I mean, that's, the recipe for almost every LO, or many LODDs is freelancing, you could call that. And
there was a lack of oversight, because I mean, the guys did what they felt at that moment was necessary to do.
Right.
But there was a lack of oversight, as you said. Like the DC didn't know what was going on, no proper transfer of command, no safety officer. I'm pretty sure nobody did a 360 on that building either. So
no, right, exactly. It never mentions anything in the report about a 360. Well, because they were across the street. So I mean, they just pulled out of the bay and into, which is always a problem too. I mean, I know that too, and I'm sure you do. You get the call that's right next door to the fire station or really close.
Yeah,
it's tough. I mean, this wasn't in the middle of the night. It was daytime, which is good. But you get those in the middle of the night, and you didn't have any drive time to kind of wake up, orient yourself, get all your poop in a group, if you will. So, around the corner sometimes may have added to this whole thing, which you can't change that. I mean, the building.
What was it say? No discretionary time to think it through, right?
Right, exactly. Which they, should have taken, but of course the cops, they're banging on, or whoever, the bystanders are banging on the truck door going, help me. Yeah. Those are always bad. Again, it goes back to training on complex incidents.
Yeah.
Number 10, establish RIT assignments. The incident commander was aware that crews were working inside the structure, but RIT was not established until after personnel were missing. Mm-hmm. I know in our neighboring province here, British Columbia, you cannot assign a second crew to the inside of the building. It's a WCB regulation. My understanding is, I'm sure somebody will come back and correct me, but that you have to assign a safety or RIT before you assign a second crew to the building, or before 10 minutes are over. Yeah. You have 10 minutes from first initial arrival to assign a RIT crew.
Which is interesting, because the statistics from the States, the Project Mayday, stated that most Maydays happen to the first arriving crew within the first 4 minutes.
Right. So the 10 minutes doesn't really save it, but at least
doesn't really
make them do it. Yeah.
And then there's departments that we may know, they don't assign RIT till there's a second alarm called. Right. Which is right. I mean, healthy staffing is one thing, but if a crew is not prepared to do that task and mentally prepare and do a 360 and then get everything in line, they're, again, rapid intervention teams are not rapid. It's it's very.
It talks about it here in the, as soon as incident command was aware that crews were inside the structure, the next arriving unit potentially should have been assigned as the rapid intervention crew as their task, and not committed to large operations on the other side of the building. So here, they had, the truck company flowing water into the building, and then the third engine that arrived, engine 73, they were never acknowledged that they got there. So, that would, again, they could have been RIT. Eventually they ended up being RIT anyway, but.
Yeah. Paul, correct me, but they were talking about roof ventilation. So I'm not sure who was on the roof actually talking about this.
Yeah, they never went there. They just wanted to go ventilate.
Right.
Yeah, and again, many departments, even though you and I may not agree with it, still, that's a big thing. Is we have to vent the roof, and so that's kind of what they were trying to do. And then the chief was going, "Hey, let's change the tactic. Let's go."
And that those are the departments that have the staffing, first of all, they also do that a lot,
Right.
and it's always coordinated. You rarely hear from those departments like LA or any California fire department. This one is a California one, but you rarely hear anything happening due to roof ventilation, right? Because they are coordinated. They do this all the time. The problem is those small departments that don't have those calls, they don't have the experience and the coordination
Right.
to
And the
do this
resource.
properly.
And they had 12 people. What you can't fight a
No.
library fire with 12 people. It's like
No.
there's nothing you can and crews. So I mean it's no, I agree.
Yeah. And
you
everybody
know,
knows how hard it is to hump a hose line with two guys.
right.
It's so yeah, it's negligent from the department not having enough staffing. But again, there's budget restraints and all this stuff, and nobody knows what we are really doing. So
right. Yeah, exactly. And they said like here, implement a comprehensive rapid intervention crew policy, meeting industry standards during firefighting operations when there's an immediately dangerous to life and health environment. Again, recommendation 11 and 12, Mayday RIT procedures. Personnel did not follow established policy and industry standards for RIC Mayday. RIC members should be assigned before they are needed so that continual planning, like you said, the 360, getting your equipment ready, etc., and accountability can take place. When the deployment occurs, the leader should initiate a quick planning process and a briefing with the crew. Accountability with RIT shall occur. I don't think they really knew who was on RIT in reading the report. But, because there was another Captain BC 70 was RIT, but then Engine 73 was RIT too. So neither occurred during the library incident deployment. Large area search techniques, which that is really hard to do. I've never even done it. I've talked with people a lot about it, but large area search bags, RIT ropes were not available. Searching with a hose line, even dry, was not performed. They just went in blind and tried to find these guys, and they didn't take an SCBA, which of course might have helped to get air to the captain right away. They recommend that the members of this department complete state fire training firefighter survival course. I know the IAFF has an awesome firefighter survival course. I've taken it except for the practical part because I wasn't an IAFF department, but I took all the online training and I tried to initiate it within my departments, even though we didn't actually take, we couldn't do the official course, and it was such a great course. Everybody should take that course, which exactly what they say here. And I've done lots of rapid intervention crew operations, trying to get guys to drag firefighters through or dummies or whatever through abandoned homes and stuff just to try to make it so they've done it before, build that muscle memory. And then they talk about large area search training. Annual training on the above topics is recommended. Consider operation area RIC policy. So maybe like mutual aid area, maybe, I don't know, op area RIC policy. Power reports were not conducted until an hour and 45 minutes into the incident. So you really didn't know where people were. They didn't have the incident clock. Do you guys use that, the timer, how long you've been at the call?
We do, and also dispatch usually gives us, I'm not sure, 5 minutes. I think it's 10-minute increments.
Right. Yeah, just something, right? Because
we do have a clock in the trucks. I'm not sure if officers use that. Hopefully the training kicks in and you at least write down the starting time, or you have your printout, right, with the starting time and all your rigs. So that's what we usually use, or our officers use that just as a guideline, a crutch to know which rigs are coming, which ones are there, and then you get the address and you get the starting time of the incident, all this stuff. So all the pertinent information.
I know some of our departments, we used to say if it's a working fire or something like that, we'd have a timer and dispatch would come on the radio and tell you how long it's been. They didn't have emergency traffic procedures when the strategy was changed. So there was no, emergency traffic on the radio, no tone, nothing like that to make sure everybody's paying attention. Everybody knew that it was changed. And of course they changed it with people in the building. So that's tough too. But I mean, they had to do something. So yeah, they talk here resource check-in procedures. There was no staging. There was no resource tracking. Units did not check in with command upon arrival and wait for assignment. They just sort of got there.
Yeah.
Check-in and accountability reports. These were not used consistently during the event. Evacuation signals. There was no evacuation signals during the incident at points where changes in strategy occurred without positive confirmation from crews working on the interior. Dispatch personnel were not aware of the meaning of emergency traffic. Again, it talks about, adopt procedures in fire scope regarding evacuation signals. We used to use air horns. That was the evacuation signals, along with something on the radio and a tone. I don't know what your department uses, but
yeah, that's more on the side note. But the funny thing is, like, when we talked about it as a department, and we trained on firefighter survival and the RIC and all this stuff, media procedures, and we talked about, oh yeah, we use the air horns, and then one of the guys, like, just all of the blue, is like, yeah, I don't think the air horns work when you pull the park brake. And then so our chief checked, and yeah, it was true. So the mechanics had to change the air horn setting, because in theory it all sounds nice.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
If somebody calls the Mayday, everybody goes to the Mayday channel. It's a cluster F, right?
Yeah.
So,
well,
yeah.
Like, I used to sell fire trucks, like, and
Yeah.
people, and one of the fire departments I was in, we had an workplace injury claim, because somebody, some of the trucks had the stupid foot switches for, oh, pardon my French, the foot switches for air horns. And one day, guys walking in front of the truck, and someone hit the foot switch, and the power was on, and the air horn went off. So yeah, some fire departments would say, I don't want the air horns to work when the park brake's on. Yeah. And then, the astute salesperson would say, yeah, but what about evacuation signal then? Do you use something else or what? Because it won't work because the park brake's on. So that's interesting that you say that. Very interesting. Yeah. Safety officer, you mentioned that before. There was no safety officer assigned in the initial stages of the incident. Of course, they only had 12 people, so they didn't really have anybody to assign as safety officer. Create a system to ensure incident safety officer. Even that could have been the mutual aid. On the first mutual aid, that battalion chief that was supposed to come on the second alarm, they could be the safety officer. Of course, NFPA 1561 states incident safety officer required qualified person to meet the officer of fire officer level 1 as specified in NFPA 1021. Yada yada yada. So having a safety officer, very important. Blue card really pushes, having an officer assigned to that role somewhere in there. It's everybody's responsibility to do safety, but someone's got to be looking at it, and of course it didn't happen here.
I think fire command, whoever assumes command, that is the main guy in charge of safety, and like the safety officer, I don't think it has to be something to be assigned early in the incident.
I agree that the commander needs to be in charge of safety, and in my opinion, the commander needs to be, and some people don't like this, but he needs to be locked in the truck, listening to the radio, because the only tool command has is the radio. And this commander missed, 2 or 3 or 4 radio calls between people inside and other units, and that other engine, the third engine in, didn't catch that they showed up because he was probably, on the front looking at the fire, worrying about those guys, which I understand. But, the radio skill and the focus on the people that are in the hazard zone is critical for the incident commander.
Yeah, that is, I agree and I disagree. There's 2 things. Like, as a fire commander, you also want to know the building, you want to see the building, you want to have a good view, and you don't get that when you stay in the seat. I get that you want to listen to the radio, so it's kind of like a 2-edged sword there. It's like you got to be mobile enough, but also focused enough on the radio communication, right? That's, I think, an aide, like in a lot of bigger departments, the chief or fire commander has an aide,
right,
that helps out, right? We sometimes assign a driver.
Yep,
Not that
absolutely.
our fire commander is mobile, but the problem with not being mobile is we quite often miss the 360. And that is probably one of the number one recommendations or causes of line of duty deaths in the NIOSH reports is a lack of 360.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
we rarely do this because the fire commander assigns the crews and everybody's focused on the task and nobody does the 360. So that's something that has to be regulated through SOPs or SOGs, right? And even if the fire commander just gets out once, walks around and gets a 3-side kind of view, right? Just to have that knowledge of the building, and then he can go back and listen to the radio. That for me, that's kind of like where I'm torn between. Yes, you should be in the seat, but you should also be mobile, and I think that's where I guess the safety officer comes in.
Right, and it's also very difficult on a bigger building. So again, this is that switch from a house to a commercial building. It's so big to get around it, and the first officer, second officer in didn't drive around or whip up the alley in the fire SUV or whatever to get a look. I'm waiting for those drones. You can buy the remote control drones. You just press the button and they deploy or pull a compartment open and pull out the tray, and then you get an overhead view. I think those would be a cool tool.
1710 says you can save a chief if you get a drone.
Okay.
I'm not sure about that one, but
no, but they have those remote control drones that are tethered, and you just press, activate them, and they go up and they send you back video feed. So I think those are going to have a place eventually. But right now everybody gets a drone and an operator, but that you don't have time in the first 15 minutes for that.
No, and you know what? The 360, like you pull up to any object, you cover 2 sites already.
Right.
You see Alpha or Delta, or you see Alpha Bravo. Really, all you have to do is go halfway the length of a building so you can check Charlie and walk back, and you're done.
Yeah, right? And I don't know where the incident commander came from, because he wasn't there immediately, so he may have driven from wherever and been able to see it. We don't know that, but yeah, the other recommendations here, we talked about this before, of course, was the calculation of fire flow.
Yeah.
Based on the pre-plans, the building hand lines selected were not adequate for the building initial attack.
Well, they didn't bring a hand line in, so there's zero flow right there.
Right. And it talks about, using residential tactics for commercial fires is a risk and a frequent trap that firefighters fall into, which we were talking about.
Yeah.
Recommendation to adopt NFPA 1410 minimum 300 gallons a minute between the first and second hand lines. The building pre-plan required an initial tack flow of actually more than that, which 460 gallons a minute.
But Paul, nobody does that. That 300 gallons, that's a 44 and a 65. Like who stretches a 65 interior
right
as a backup line? Like, I guarantee you 99.9% of the departments don't.
Right. And especially but with a commercial building like this, it's a hand line is going to be a tough deal. It's not going to knock that fire down according to the pre-plan that they did.
So the pre-plan should have stated first arriving rig waits for the second arriving rig, so they have sufficient manpower on the first hand line to bring in a 2.5.
Yeah, which probably all got thrown out the window. Well, not really, because they were going to advance with engine 3/4 anyway. Until they found out there was maybe somebody inside, and then they went to find the person. So, so it talks about that. Provide training, the use of water application pattern, gallons per minute, evaluate current hose and nozzle standards compared to industry standards. Consider assigning firefighter positions to assist with hose handling within the structure. Continuing education that consists of updates in fire behavior, building construction, ventilation profile. 1403 compliant live fire training program within the overall training program. Recognize underwriters, laboratories, and NIST firefighter safety research, where they're saying, a lot more on the water flow, and you've taken a few courses on that, more water flow and how to do that with minimal manning. Those are popular, the nozzle forward type courses. maybe would help in this kind of operation.
Again, if you don't take a hose line, you have to worry about techniques of advancing a hose line.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Right.
That's a quick search, and we're going to do that. Right.
Yeah.
The assignment of second companies, it talks about Truck 73 took defensive positions. First in or company officer needs to confirm the operational mode of the incident to all arriving units. Upon arrival, the first in chief officer needs to confirm the operational mode with all units. And you could make an argument that Truck 73 was doing a transitional attack.
Yeah.
You may not have known that Truck 70 or Engine 71 was inside. That's kind of how
it didn't help the inside crew.
No.
Didn't hurt them, but also didn't help because it didn't make the fire conditions better. So not sure how they evaluated to put water in there and where. So it's kind of that if you don't see pictures or anything like that, it's tough to evaluate that, right?
There are some pictures in the report, but I couldn't really determine anything from them specifically about that. And basically all we're doing is summarizing what the report says. We weren't there. Right. We haven't analyzed it enough to make any kind of suppositions on that. They did talk, the next one, recommendations 24 and 25 were coordinated commercial ventilation and coordinated fire attack.
Yeah.
So there was no coordinated aggressive commercial ventilation to support fire rescue or rescue, fire attack, or RIT. Yeah. During the library incident, there was no commercial ventilation to support firefighting tactics until an attempt late in the incident. This plan needs to be communicated. So there was no plan. I mean, nothing was coordinated. We already read that. Yeah. There was no. They just went in to go get it, and that's what happened, unfortunately, without a hose line.
Yeah, the report was very detailed on the conditions inside besides zero visibility, because they ran out of air. They got lost and run out of air.
Right.
But they never complained about high heat or anything like that. I don't think they were even close to the seat of the fire.
We may see more come out on that when we get the NIOSH report, and we could do a separate go on that because they sometimes do a lot more modeling of the fire and where it goes.
Yeah, we could do a follow-up on that one. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Number 26, of course, this was the elephant in the room. Staffing, effective firefighting force. PFD did not meet the minimum staffing levels as outlined by the National Fire Protection Association 1710. Minimum daily staffing to a working fire for PFD is 11 and one firefighter from another county who brings their own truck. The total number of firefighters at the scene in the first 10 minutes is 12, which is 4 personnel short of the NFPA standard. Minimum force personnel should staff every engine or truck company. It also states for a low hazard structure, an effective firefighting force of 16 personnel should be on scene in the first 10 minutes of the incident, 28 in that time frame for a medium hazard average commercial fire.
Like a library.
Like a library. It's exactly what it says. The situation is compounded by the fact that surrounding mutual aid, automatic fire aid agencies are seriously also understaffed and cannot physically supply sufficient personnel in a timely manner to augment the Porterville Fire Department. This does not allow Porterville to fill all the vital roles as identified in NFPA 1710, which is the minimum standard, as an effective firefighting force. Porterville Fire Department has 0.55 firefighters per 1,000 people in the city of Porterville. The average in California is 0.81, so they're below the average for California. And the national average in the United States per 1,000 residents is 1.5.
Holy moly.
Half. I know I've had this argument in departments where I've worked with a 3-person engine company. And there's lots of cities here in Western Canada that run 3-person engines, and it's not too bad if you have another engine. At least you can get 6, but still it's way below what we need. And I do commend cities that do staff up to meet these standards, because it's for the safety of the firefighters and protection of the community.
There's only 2 consequences. You either kill firefighters or you make it safer. Or actually, there's a third one: you don't go interior. and then you have to explain to the people why you couldn't save their baby.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
No, it's a tough
that
deal.
becomes a political thing, and that's why I think like NFPA has a reason why it's called not for practical application, because it's really dreamland for most departments, right?
Yeah. I mean, some are doing it, you know, and
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
which is good, which is great. Yeah. The next recommendation, of course, is the training program. So it talks about, you know, they do not have a structured, comprehensive training program. Over the years, Porterville has not consistently placed a high priority on the training of personnel. Fortunately, under present administration, it's improving. Yeah, they were doing a lot of online training, and it's so tough. If you have low staffing, 3 guys per engine, and if you can't get them together to do stuff, it's really hard to train for a big building fire, commercial, with no people. They actually have a classroom, training tower, all that stuff, but it wasn't utilized to its full potential. The majority of Porterville fire training is computer based. Hands-on multi-company training sessions, including command and control, are infrequent. Computer-based training does have its place, and hey, I'm a big supporter of computer-based training, but you still need that hands-on, moving the iron, spraying the water, build the muscle memory. Yeah.
Especially for us in Canada, like we got 8 months of winter, so it's tough to flow water.
Yep, makes a mess and ice everywhere.
Yeah, I'm a supporter of all this online training, but it has to be followed up by hands-on practication. And then if you depend on mutual aid, it has to be practiced. There's no if or what, it has to be done, right?
Yep, and that's the end of the report from this Porterville Fire, the serious accident review team. It's you know, again, 2 years ago this happened, and 2 firefighters tragically lost their lives, and it's a lot of the same problems that we see in LODD reports.
Yeah.
You know, tell people what you have, tell people where you're going, take a hose line if there's any chance that you might need it. And training, lots of training.
Lots of training. I'm still in awe that this happened 2 years ago. This always sounds like an incident like 10, 15 years ago, before UL and all this stuff.
Right.
That department has been asleep, and I hope all the managers in charge were fired, because that was pure negligence. Those brothers didn't have to die.
Yeah, it makes it tough, but hey, that's why we're doing this, to get the word out.
Absolutely. One thing, Paul, before we end this, the thermal imaging camera was never mentioned.
No, you're right.
I'm not sure if they had one, if it was working or not. Maybe not. I'm pretty sure NIOSH would look into this.
Yeah.
Because
so
if you don't have a hose line, you have 1 or 2 thermal imaging cameras just to get your ass out of the building, right?
Like the first podcast we did with the in Ohio, I did it myself, and the 2 firefighters died on the 2nd floor of kind of an odd apartment above a garage. And they said the thermal imaging camera was sitting on the steps outside and was never used.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, like, you know, they need, that's why we have those tools, right? Yeah. People work hard to
have the tools and know how to use them. I'm very passionate about thermal imaging cameras. I'm following Andy Starnes.
Yep.
And there's inside what's it called?
Good point.
Oh, he's going to be so mad at me. It's called Inside LIC. I think this is company. Anyhow, you can Google it. Andy Starnes, fantastic instructor, fantastic, passionate guy, one of the best dudes I know in the fire service. And he talks about this all the time. They've done research. They did the classic, hands-on search, which is still your fallback baseline.
Right.
But you have a 70% better chance of finding a victim and find your way out by using the camera. 70% better chance. You're faster, more efficient if you have a camera and know how to use it.
So absolutely. Yep. I mean, we were my last department I was on, we had 2, one for the officer and one for the crew.
Just if you have you know what? Officers should have a decision-making camera, and the firefighter should have a situational awareness camera for sure. Right. But again, it's cost, right? And departments that don't want to get staffing, they are usually a little bit cheap on that front as well. And then updating technology.
It's
My
tough.
department, unfortunately, the cameras we're using, they've been around for over 10 years. And you know how technology advances. Like nobody wants the cell phone that they had 10 years ago. And that's basically the same with the thermal imaging camera. It's just
Yeah,
so
it's tough.
advanced.
I mean, I've been in the other seat, when you're in front of council saying, "Hey, we
Oh,
need this, we need this," and
yes.
it's hard. And yeah, firefighters, cameras. I'd rather have firefighters, but today's day and age, a camera should be available as well. Absolutely.
Yes,
We
absolutely.
better cut this one off. We're getting long.
Yes.
So thanks a lot for participating.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll get you another podcast in a couple of weeks.